On this episode of Queer Sports, can we move beyond gender stereotypes in sports? Confronting the made-up rules about gender and sexuality that keep athletes in the closet. We've got Olympic figure skater Johnny Weir, soccer pro Chelsea Washington, former NFL lineman Ryan O'Callahan, and author Lindsay D'Arcangelo. San Francisco's queer wrestlers take to the ring. And he's given athletes a safe space to come out. A chat with OutSports.com co-founder Cyd Ziegler. Welcome to Queer Sports. All right, on that note, I'm Ariel Zimros, and we're talking about the pressure on athletes to conform to gender stereotypes. In the queer community, if you fit into traditional gender roles like the hyper-masculine gay dude or the femme lesbian, it seems like that makes you more palatable to straight people. And I think this phenomenon is even more amplified in sports. For example, right after coming out, former NBA player Jason Collins felt the need to stress his masculinity, telling the press, "I go against the gay stereotype," which is why I think a lot of players will be shocked. That guy is gay? Am I so physical to prove that being gay doesn't make you soft? Who knows? That's something for a psychologist to unravel. Ryan, what do you think's going on there?
Well, one of the first emails I got after I came out publicly was someone telling me that I was the most palatable gay man they've ever
They actually use the word palatable?
They actually use palatable.
Wow, okay.
And as offensive that can be, I understand what they're saying, though, because I think it takes seeing all different types of people to help change thoughts and you know, the minds of people who may not necessarily be on our side or a supporter of us. You know, those are toxic things to say. But the fact is, there are all different versions of gay men.
Johnny, I'm curious what you think.
Well, from my experience, I'm in a niche sport. It's not the NFL. It's not huge contracts, huge sponsorships that are on our shoulders. It's kind of every 4 years at the Olympics, people watch and they applaud you. And for me, my whole identity challenge was deciding that I wanted people to care about who I am a lot more than what I am. So that's what I always tried to give. And luckily, I had a support system, my family, my coaches, my teammates, other people in skating that were around me that were supportive of that. So I never made my sexuality a big thing. And, you know, that's how I wanted to live. And so I've never really cared much about being palatable. I've cared about being me. But again, it's a very different world that I come from than the NFL or major pro sports.
Right. Well, I guess along those notes, Chelsea, do you feel any kind of pressure as an out player?
Yeah, I think for me, it was really, I have kind of a unique journey to it. I think something that I've always been able to kind of credit at the end of the day has been, you know, me playing as a closeted athlete and like almost feeling like if you watch film of me, it's like I'm playing with the weight of the world on my shoulders. And then the next season right after that, I look like free as a bird. So I think for my mom, it was really, I think that was the biggest thing was obviously coming out, and I think any parent in that situation, you know, they're gonna take it how they're gonna take it. And but for her, it's just seeing that, I think it was like, she couldn't deny that that was exactly what I needed in order to kind of step into like this new version of myself, I guess you could say.
I mean, there really is something that I think hopefully all of us can kind of relate to this, the feeling of being more free once you're out. Like, is that something that resonates with you guys?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm obviously not a professional athlete, but just, I mean, I can't even imagine carrying that weight, like Chelsea said. I know just for me personally, like having that weight after coming out to my family and everything, and how, like you said, free that feels. So I can't imagine juggling that as a professional athlete.
Yeah, and I've spoken to quite a few athletes who were closeted that came out, and they all say the same thing about how much freer they feel and how much better they're able to perform on the field. And, you know, lately we've had a good example in the NFL of someone coming out and actually playing better. Carl Nassib came out a year and a half or 2 years ago now, plays for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's doing a fabulous job.
I think that even within sports, there is a hierarchy of the type of sport that you're playing, right? Like you're talking about the NFL, hockey also viewed as being very masculine. And then there's figure skating and gymnastics that some people will outright label as like a gay sport. Johnny, I don't love saying that out loud, but I am curious, was that your experience as a figure skater to hear that kind of thing?
Absolutely, and still, it's like that. Most people think it's either a girl's sport or a gay sport, but you know, I wish there'd been more gay men in figure skating when I was coming up, to be completely fair. There is a community, of course, because it's a very freeing artistic moment that pairs with extreme high-level sport. So it is attractive to to express yourself while doing something that is so athletic and so difficult. But definitely when you meet people, they know the big names, they know the legends, but mostly they know it's a sport for girls and gays, which just isn't the case. But again, it's a sport that's so niche.
Right.
And the reason that I came out publicly was just because it was during a rash of teen suicides, and I felt like even just one voice can be helpful. And otherwise, I'm just like, focus on all the other stuff about me. Focus on what I've done with my life, how hard I've worked, not just that I'm that gay ice skater.
Well, I guess, to push that a little bit further, right? That's the external view of how people look at figure skating. People who are not in the world of figure skating. But you, growing up, coming up in that sport, was the idea like, oh, this is a gay sport? Like, was that your experience of it from within that culture?
I mean, I went to public school. So again, it was more of other people putting their ideas on me. I knew exactly what I was doing. I know how hard I was sweating and crying and bleeding and dieting and doing all the things that it took for me to go to the Olympics.
Yeah.
And they don't get that. So it's something that I grew I'm in a judge sport also. It's not touchdowns or running the fastest or swimming the fastest. I'm with a panel of judges that are from all over the world, most of them half a century older than I am, and they're judging me. So you do try to conform to a certain extent and try to give them something that is palatable for them or something that's interesting for them. But there was pushback in my sport for me to be less elegant, as the term was at that time. I feel like sports are mini versions of high schools. There's always going to be a bully. There's always going to be someone that doesn't like you just for breathing air.
Yeah. And
I tried to take that on as strongly as I could.
You're smiling. What's going through your mind?
No, I think back to when he said just kind of about, the idea of high school and people putting that idea on you. That almost pushed me further into the closet when I was in high school. Those were things being said about me because I was very athletic. All I cared about was soccer. Sure, I was in, I guess you could say, like the cool group, but it was more so just because in my sport, I wanted to be the best. And so I was very fortunate enough to where, I grew up in Texas of all places. So sports in Texas, especially high school sports, are like exactly what they say or what like you watch on TV, right? Like it's ride or die. So
like the Yellow Jackets?
Yeah, like exactly.
Great reference, fantastic show. Continue.
Cue Johnny, cue Johnny.
That's all I'm thinking right now.
No, that's amazing. No, but even on the women's soccer side, like my state championship game, that's probably one of the biggest crowds I played in still as a professional athlete today. But yeah, for me, those rumors, those stereotypes, those things that came out and preluded me coming out pushed me further in because I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what I don't want to be said about me. So for me, it was things, they were saying it about me. I was really reading into it. This is exactly why I can't do it. And that's why I took such a back seat. So it wasn't until I got to college, saw how normal it was on my team, at least. My college roommate was gay. And to see her kind of live her life every day. And I'm like, wait, you have a girlfriend? She's like, yeah. I'm like, and you're like living your life? She's fine. And you're cool, you're good? She's like, yeah, I'm good. I'm happiest I've ever been. And I was like, I've never seen like an example of it.
Yeah.
And her being the same as I would be, like just living her life. So that was really what opened the door for me to be like, what the heck? I can live my life the same, like it doesn't matter.
Based on talking about the stereotypes, with sports like Johnny's, where from the outside people assume you're probably gay. Sports like football with me, they automatically assume you're straight. But women, you guys face a stereotype just being a female athlete. A lot of times people assume you're a lesbian just because you're a female athlete. So you're fighting against that.
Yeah, you see that big time in women's sports. The more masculine the sport, the more the assumption and the stereotypical, they must be lesbians.
Yes.
I wrote a book about the National Women's Football League in the 1970s, and the prevailing sentiment that these women were doing this is just because they were all lesbians and they wanted to be men.
And listen, there are a lot of like female athletes who are in fact gay.
Yes.
But I think to your point, like it pushes you further into the closet because you're scared of actually being another reason that people think that stereotype is true.
Exactly.
It's really scary.
Yeah. And then on the flip side of that, I've heard, I've been fortunate enough in my young professional career so far that like this hasn't happened to me. So I've had teammates be like, yeah, you know, we've had our ownership groups literally come and be like, okay, you're pretty. Let's put your face on a billboard and let's
Still
get
today.
fans out. Yeah, and if I remember correctly, this is maybe not even 5, 6, 7 years ago. So we're starting to move in the right direction, at least on the women's soccer front, but I know that there's still so much work to be done. But I mean, you also have that side of it, right? You have literally white, straight men getting a group of women and saying, okay, how do we make this look not like what it is, pretty much, you know what I mean?
Speaking about queers in sports, Megan Rapinoe famously quipped, "You can't win a championship without gays on your team. It's never been done before, ever." That's science right there. Obviously, this comment is really tongue-in-cheek, but I mean, I guess I'm wondering, like, is there some truth to that? Like, what exactly
It's a
is the
scientific
point?
fact. It's true. Like, if you think of, like, sports teams, there is a percentage, there has to be, scientifically, a percentage of the team that's gay. She was speaking the truth.
Yeah, and even on the football side, since I've come out publicly, I've had 6 former college teammates come out to me.
Wow.
I do feel like there is a fear, though, among athletes and people that dedicate their whole lives to achieving on the field or on the ice, whatever the case may be, of then becoming the gay player or the gay skater. When, you know, I tried to grow up with the sense, like, just do a really good job and let people see who you are. I think people often get lost in other people's perceptions of them, and they get scared of what is going to be said about them after. So like everyone else, just on a huge scale because you're playing major professional sports. But if it were my choice, I'd want to be labeled that great athlete, not the gay athlete.
Yeah.
Not that I was on a team sport, but it's not worth doing unless you are yourself. And I think showing that you're a strong addition to the sporting world, whether you're in an individual sport or not, I think that's what that statement was.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not weak, I'm here, I'm strong, and I helped us do that thing. We won. So that's where I think she was going. I don't know.
I like that.
You know.
All right. On that note, we'll be right back. Language plays a really big role in enforcing certain gender norms. I think we've all heard phrases like, be a man, don't be soft. My least favorite one is, boys will be boys. Male athletes are often praised for aggression, domination, hiding their feelings, hiding their pain specifically. Ryan, as a former NFL player, what kind of impact do those sorts of phrases have on you?
Yeah, I mean, as a child, they had a much bigger impact, just molding my mind to think I could never come out. But, actually in sport, being told to be tough and things like that, you take it to heart. And then on the professional level, you learn that you really do have to, because it's your job on the line. They're always trying to find someone who's younger and cheaper than you. So you're willing to overlook these things. And I think your willingness to sacrifice your body comes from the things you hear of, play like a man, or, don't be weak. And that sticks with you throughout your whole career.
Yeah. Johnny, did you ever hear that kind of language from your coaches?
Well, in my sport, it wasn't so aggressive. I mean, individual sport again. But my first coach was kind of like my mom growing up. And she nurtured and sheltered and did all of those things. My second coach is Ukrainian. And after some time together, because I was starting to suss her out, I speak Russian, but I was keeping that on the down low, so she wouldn't know that I could hear what she was saying about me, because I wanted to make sure she was cool. Because once you've spent a long time with one coach, it's hard to make that transition, break up, and then start with somebody new. Anyway, she was wonderful, and once we actually could communicate in a language that we both understood and that we could use our full words, I said, Johnny, I've never had a gay student before. I don't know if I'm supposed to yell at you like a man or like a woman. And a woman who grew up in the Soviet Union.
Such a complicated statement.
I know, but full on, like, grew up Soviet Union, doesn't even say I'm Ukrainian, she says I was Soviet woman. They didn't have us over there. And I told her, Galina, just yell at me like Johnny.
Yeah.
Okay. And at the end of my career, after my second Olympics, she said, Johnny, I've never been more proud of any of my students than to stand next to you. Because at that point, I was getting a lot of poo about, there was a big call on Canadian TV, my second Olympics was in Canada, to have a gender test to make sure that I was a man and man enough to compete in the men's division. There's all sorts of that stuff I deal with, but again, I just have that mentality to be so strong in myself that I don't even hear the squeaky chair. of what's going on around me. I focus on what I need and what I do. But in figure skating, I mean, there isn't really, you go, boy, like there's not a whole lot of that in my sport. Like, go tear them up, bro. You know, like,
Kill. Yes,
kill,
sure.
bro.
I love what Johnny's saying as far as, and Ryan made this point too earlier when talking about a male athlete coming out, because we see it, the WNBA, like National Women's Soccer League, like I feel like women athletes are past that point. I mean, there's really no need for announcements anymore, and they're not seen as the gay athlete. They're more than that. You know, you see the whole picture of them now. On the men's side, for a male athlete to come out, that will be the perception because that barrier hasn't been broken down yet.
Yeah.
They will be the gay athlete.
It's very essentialized.
Yes.
Especially in big sports.
Yes, and I'm talking NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, like, and it doesn't matter which because they're all masculine sports, but that barrier has yet to be broken down.
I think it takes people in Johnny's sport, we talked about earlier, they're assumed to probably be gay. People in my sport are assumed to probably be straight. And I would say it takes a lot more courage to live your life like Johnny does as a more effeminate gay man than me. You know, he, because of who he is and just how he presents himself, he faces so much more blowback than someone like me. You know, I'm also 6'7", 300 pounds, so people aren't quick to mouth off to me. But someone like Johnny, it takes so much more courage to be him than to be me. And I think some of the toughest people I meet are the young boys that are 12, 13, that are on the effeminate side that come out at that age. Because what they face throughout their whole life, starting at that age, makes them some of the toughest people there are.
For what it's worth, I think that what you did took a lot of courage too. Oh. And I don't want to take anything away from that.
I appreciate it.
Okay, so there are these phrases, boys will be boys, don't be soft. But, you know, I'm sure we've also heard the phrases like, you throw like a girl, don't be a pussy. And I'm curious, you know, from your perspective, Chelsea, like, all of these phrases are intended to put women down. Yes, they're also intended to tell guys to do certain things, but they're intended to put women down. It is a put down to say that women are less than.
Oh my gosh.
And as a female athlete, how does that impact you?
Oh, absolutely. I think on everything under the sun, don't, throw like a girl, don't hit like a girl, whatever, or hit it with your purse next time is one I've heard plenty of times.
You've heard that said?
Hit it with your purse next time.
You can't hit things with your purse.
Yeah, I'm like, how would you go about that? Anyway, you know, my mind is too logical. I'm like trying to picture it. I don't even understand. But it's just, you know, it's one of those things where even, you know, I think I only had about 2 female coaches in my career so far. I've been playing soccer for 20 years. And, you know, having male coaches most of the time, things like being on your period. If you feel like so sick, and this is so common, right? Girls will wake up, you have cramps, you literally are like, I can't move. But if you say something like that to a male coach, they're like, okay, get on with it. You know, pop a Midol and let's go. Like, what are you doing, you know? And it's things like that where you don't feel, you know, you're scared to be seen as lesser than.
So maybe a lot of you have seen A League of Their Own, whether it's the old movie or the new TV show, which is fantastic. Back then, women who played sports, a lot of them were called unladylike. And I'm curious if that is still the case today, right? Does being a female athlete still mean that you are unladylike or more masculine? Is that still what it feels like?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think kind of what we said earlier, I think, Ryan, you said it, there's so many different types of gays. Just on a female athlete sense, I've seen, you know, you have femme gay women to, you know, butch, masculine. I think there's just such a variety that I wouldn't necessarily say that I felt personally that it's ever like hindered me or I have to live up to some sort of expectation.
Okay. I think in a sport like mine, when you think of an ice skater, you generally think of beautiful woman in a pretty dress with sparkles all over it and hair and makeup and the whole thing. To try and give a little bit more leniency to little girls in pretty boxes. Years ago, I forget which year it was, they started allowing women to wear pants or tights.
Yeah.
They could do full onesie, like I loved a full on, like, with the feet in it and everything. Like, that's how I like to roll. Just you slide it up, then you don't lose parts when you're traveling and stuff. It was a science, really.
Also serves a purpose. I love it. Okay,
yeah,
great.
But I told my whole story because we don't talk, so it's like, look at all this glitter. But I find that a lot of the female skaters are still afraid to go pants There have been some, and there have been some high-profile pant moments, but they're afraid of tarnishing that image of the beautiful figure skater.
Right.
Like, will a woman be the Olympic champion wearing pants?
Yes, can she actually win?
Right.
That's why I love the WNBA so much, because you get the broad spectrum.
Yeah.
You get the femmes, the masculine, like even the pregame fits. You see players expressing themselves any which way they want, even on the court. You know, there's players who play in full-on makeup and nails, eyelashes, the whole nine, and like it's just a wide variety. Just to see that now, and to have like a younger generation just seeing that you could pretty much be any type of whatever and still be a pro athlete in the WNBA. I just love it. I think it's awesome.
We're going to talk a lot more about that right after this.
Next, OutSports co-founder Cyd Ziegler covers a new generation of queer athletes. Cyd Ziegler is the editor and founder of the sports news website OutSports. He's written for MSNBC, for CNN, and Out Magazine, covering the intersection of sports and queer identities.
Cyd, hi, how you doing?
Fantastic. I love talking about this stuff, so thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Just to kind of situate people, what exactly is OutSports?
We started OutSports in 1999, really because nobody else was talking about the intersection of then gay athletes in sports. And as a couple of gay sports fans, Jim Basinski and I realized that there was a need for this, a desire for this. And over the last 20 plus years, we've written the coming out stories of many athletes in high school, college, and pro sports. And we really feel like we are the nexus in the media of this conversation.
Since 1999, what kind of change have you seen when it comes to covering queer athletes, and not just at OutSports, but in the media at large?
Well, first of all, other people in the media are now writing about this.
Right.
People are seeking out these stories. And what was cool is 20 years ago, OutSports was the only place. I mean, there was the occasional story in some other publication. Now we're competing with USA Today and CNN and Sports Illustrated for these kinds of stories, and competition is a good thing. So we love that. We love to see that other people in the media are interested in these conversations. Our tagline at OutSports is "Courage is contagious," and the more people who can see these kinds of stories, see that kind of courage, and they can find it in their own lives.
What makes you decide that an athlete coming out is going to be a big story? I mean, I think that it's always a big story personally for them, but what makes you say, oh, this one's going to be big?
In the media, we cover what is news, and what is news is what is new. So last year we had a football player at an HBCU come out. Well, we hadn't seen that before. In men's professional sports, even though we've seen a few come out, it's still new. In women's sports, when Cheryl Swoops came out in 2005, that was pretty new. Today, one of the beautiful things about women's sports is that, for the most part, these are not big stories. Candace Parker came out, of course, a superstar like that. It is, but it's one of the things that we've seen over the years, in that in women's sports, a lot of these stories aren't huge stories, aren't big talking pieces, because so many have come out. In men's sports, we still trail a bit in the number of people who come out. So what's new? And then sometimes some just break through and explode, and we didn't expect it.
Yeah. You've been covering this for so long. You've seen a lot of change. What would you like to see the media do when it comes to trans athletes?
I think the media has failed on the conversation with trans athletes so far the way that they failed on gay athletes 20 years ago, in that it's sensationalized. They focus on the big headlines instead of telling the story of the transgender girl on the Sweetbriar College field hockey team who's sitting on the bench and who's celebrated by her teammates and is not setting national records or winning national championships. The big headline and the sensationalism is what the media is attracted to with trans athletes. And the vast majority of trans athletes aren't winning championships. There's no question that there are trans women in women's sports who are winning championships. One of the things that's interesting is that there aren't trans men who are winning men's championships. Why is that? These kinds of thoughtful, introspective conversations are being totally lost in the media, being replaced by huge sensationalism like national championships by Leah Thomas.
Right. One thing that I've heard a lot from quite a few athletes is the idea that the atmosphere in the locker room contributes to them remaining in the closet. What do you think is going on there, and what can we do to change that?
So whether you're talking about men or women, I hear similar conversations that the locker room environment, particularly in professional sports, isn't necessarily homophobic, but it is very heterocentric. That is, a lot of conversation is about sex with the opposite sex, dating the opposite sex. And when you hear all your teammates, if you're in a men's locker room talking about some hot woman or her body parts or naked pictures and sex with them, if you're a gay athlete, you feel like that message is you don't belong here. This is what we talk about here.
Right, this is the norm.
This is the norm, and you're not the norm. I've heard that over and over again. And I've heard it from gay professional athletes like Ryan O'Callahan. I've heard it from straight professional athletes like Chris Cluey and Michael Irvin, that when they heard conversations in the locker room in high school, there was a lot of homophobia, and by the time you get to the pros, there's not a lot of homophobia, but what across the board there is lots of heterocentrism.
I believe in 2016, you said that you were frustrated. You had some frustration that you weren't seeing more gay men come out of the closet. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Like, what would you like to see happen? What do you think is going on?
Years ago, we at OutSports focused a lot on professional sports. Athletes coming out, professionals, because they're going to change the game, the conversation. And over the last 5-10 years, my obsession with professional athletes coming out is gone. It's wonderful when it happens, but my focus now is all of the incredible high school and college athletes who are coming out and totally changing the conversation in sports.
So what is going on with young athletes?
2021, we did a study of 1,000 coming out experiences of athletes in Canada and the United States. 95% of them said that their coming out experience was neutral at worst, and 82% said that it was positive.
Across genders?
Across genders, across sexual orientations. When you just focus on the big five men's sports, football, baseball, basketball, hockey, and soccer, it goes from 95% to 92%. It is really across genders, across sports, across locations. There are slight fluctuations, but it doesn't change a lot. They themselves say that their teammates and their coaches widely accept them. And here's what I think the most important part of that Out in Sports study. We asked them that compared to the rest of the school, how did your teammates accept you? About half said that it was the same. And over 3 times as many said their teammates were more accepting than the rest of the school.
Wow.
Which to me speaks to the power of sports and the inclusive nature of sports, that when athletes come out, their teammates accept them more than the rest of the school does. And this isn't us saying it. This is them, how they report their own experiences. A football player at an HBCU, a captain of the team, came out in North Carolina, and their only question was, can we tease you about it? Because we like you, and we don't want to be weird about it.
Yeah, we still want to be able to
and
do
he was
what we
like,
normally do, which
please,
is tease people.
Yes, please tease me about it. It's okay.
Yeah, that resonates a lot. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you don't want people to teasing is a form of love in some subcultures, and that's
what people don't understand about sports. A lot of the teasing that goes on is actually full of love. It's to let people know you're one of the guys, you're one of the women.
Cyd, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this was wonderful.
Absolutely. I listen, I'm always loving to talk about this and appreciate the questions.
Yeah. Let's talk about athletes in fashion. this is your section, Johnny. This is for you.
This is where I live.
You were born for this moment. You might remember NBA player Dennis Rodman attracting attention with his gender nonconforming style. Today, athletes continue that tradition, right? You have Russell Westbrook wearing a dress to the Met Gala. You have Adam Rippon donning a leather harness under his tux at the Oscars. Destiny Henderson sporting a blue suit to draft day. Johnny, do you think fashion can be used to break down gender stereotypes?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like, one thing though, the fashion does help you when you're having a rough day, especially in my world. So it'll help you look really put together even though you're losing your shit underneath it all.
Yes.
If you're falling all over the ice, I'm like, well, he dressed up like a swan. How cute is that? So there are times when it can certainly help. But, you know, having fashion always as the conversation, it's a little bit like armor. You can hide a little bit behind it. You can really get your focus in on what you're trying to accomplish because everyone's talking about, like for my first Olympic performance, I wore a swan costume and I had a beak as my glove.
Brilliant, by the way.
It was brilliant. Thank you.
Genius.
It really was a great moment for me. It helped me kind of push away all the noise because I had my suit of armor and everyone was talking about my glove and they might miss something that I'm doing. But I think that expressing yourself through fashion is such a powerful thing because most of the time athletes don't get the opportunity to talk and tell their story. So you tell a lot to people by the suit of armor that you put on.
Yeah, I think team sports, it's almost impossible to show your individuality with the uniforms you're given and the tight set of rules that you have to play with as far as wristbands or something. And that's why you see a lot of athletes, when they go to the event that day, that's their only time they can show that they're an individual.
Yeah. You know, you use the word costume a lot, and I know you were referring to figure skating specifically, but I think as a queer person, as a transmasculine individual, I'm always thinking, well, every single time I put on clothes, it's a costume, right? It is a thing that I'm trying to present to the world, and you know what you're wearing right now is a costume. What you're wearing right now, all of it is that.
It's cashmere.
Because it's all kind of cashmere costume, right? But it's all kind of that, right? It's all kind of fake, and it's all kind of about how you want to present, and we're all trying to present a specific thing, right? Somebody looks at me, I'm wearing a military-style jacket. I'm also wearing a transgender designer, right? Like the person who made this pants, Willie Norris at Outlier, and this shirt, Willie Norris at Outlier, she's a trans designer. And so I think like all of that is part of the message that you're trying to send out. And I think as queer individuals, we are in a unique position to understand that.
You know, like just thinking even what we're doing today, like sitting here in these clothes or costumes. I love thinking of it that way.
Yeah, I mean, you were trying to project something today, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I want people to compliment my shoes, and I've gotten 3 so far. I'm hoping for 5, so yeah,
Shoes
almost
really
there.
are great.
Almost there.
I feel that. I feel you on that.
Yeah. We got it.
I did think about what I put on today.
Yeah, who do you want to be?
Case specific. I just want to be like clever and sweet.
You're pulling it off.
Thanks.
Good job.
Thank you. But you know, I think everyone would prefer to be naked.
I don't know. I'm wearing a binder. I don't really want to be naked around you guys. Okay, so the WNBA used to push athletes to be more feminine. Now, 20% of WNBA players are openly queer, and a lot of them are using game day entrances as catwalks to proudly display an androgynous style. Lindsay, do you think these athletes are changing the way that gender is viewed in sport?
Yes, for sure. Pre-game fits, like what was just mentioned, when you're on a team, you all wear the same uniform. And so having the pre-game fits and being able to stand out and present a certain way or wear a certain outfit or just express yourself that way is huge. It's huge for these athletes, and I think it's needed. Also, like Johnny said, telling a story as a figure skater with your costumes, these players tell a story about themselves. The variety is so great. And it's awesome to see. And it's like a topic of conversation. Like pre-game fits all over Twitter, Instagram. I know the National Women's Soccer League, they do it too. The social media teams put out pre-game fits. But it's WNBA, NBA, like, it's just fun to see. It's fun.
I think it would have made a big difference for me as a basketball player when I was a kid to see that. I think it would have made a huge difference.
Same.
I love seeing these big, strong men NFL players. I love when the pictures come through of their fits, their fit checks, because it makes me see them as a whole lot more than a guy in a helmet that can throw a ball. It shows me who they are, who's a softie. Of course, a lot of them wear suits that are way too small for them.
Yes, that is a little bit of a problem, I agree.
But the individuality that comes from it. Again, being an individual athlete, looking at a team sport, there's so little opportunity to really express yourself unless it's through the hair or the nails or whatever the case may be, that seeing these heroes of sport in something that they love, it humanizes them to me. I mean, when Serena walked out there in her tutu at the US Open, I was just like on the floor, like heels to Jesus, excited about what she had just given us. And I love that fashion has the power to really turn these titans of sport into people. Is that what you were thinking too about the checks in the NFL?
I mean, I probably should care more about what I wear, how I present myself. And when I see, like the images of the WNBA players or the NFL players, I'm just always happy to see how confident they look. And, I'm not necessarily going to judge what they're wearing.
It's too tight a lot.
Yeah.
Way too tight.
It's hard to find big clothing.
But they have like really nice contracts. Like you can just get like a nice little suit put together. I'm just saying.
Next up, queer wrestlers in San Francisco talk about stereotypes in wrestling and what it means to fully express yourself in the ring. Welcome back. We recently visited with a group of queer wrestlers at Folsom Street Fair in San Francisco. Take a look.
Yeah, everyone's excited. Everyone's nervous, but like nervous because this is for many of them like the first time they've done something in this kind of environment. Wrestling is like my mother tongue. Being a wrestling fan predates everything else about me. It predates my current like gender and sexual identity. Wrestling was like one of the few things that no matter where I lived, that was a thing that I had and a thing that I could hold on to.
I started watching it with my brother and I was like, wow, the theater of it all. Everything's just so larger than life.
It's not necessarily about who's the strongest, but it's who's the best.
It is as campy as you want it to be or as serious as you want it to be, combined with people doing wild shit with their body.
You can't just go in there with like no training and say, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah.
There's a method to it.
Yeah, people talk about wrestling being fake. It's really not. A strike is a strike, a body slam is a body slam. And secondly, who we are, the characters we portray, come from something very real inside of us.
For one day out of the year, we're gonna present ourselves the way we want to be seen and be respected and admired for it, just by all the queer talent being here and performing. And that ties in to the activism of the Folsom Street Fair.
Folsom Street, one of the city's weirdest street fairs, is back.
The event has been a perfect celebration of the city's kink scene for more than 39 years.
This year, about 40,000 are expected.
We have people coming in from all over the West Coast, and I really hope that today can be like a day that we can all just like come together as a community.
The intersection of queerness and pro wrestling is gonna have a support system, because as queer people, we don't always have that with our blood family.
After that, we have Llama Jack versus the debuting Lady Enigma.
Today is my pro wrestling debut, and not to sound cliche and cheesy, but wrestling has been one of the most transformational journeys in my life. I grew up in a very, very conservative, far right-wing household. I even went to gay conversion camp as a kid because I wasn't developing the way my family wanted me to. I buried a lot of things that made me who I am very deep down. Wrestling was that thing that I stuck with, the thing that disciplined my mind to show up at the gym. I started to have more confidence and more pride in myself just because I started to see who I wanted to be.
Folsom Street, how y'all feeling? It is now time for your opening contest.
There's a lot of history between queers being heels, AKA bad guys.
This person's dangerous, this person's sexually devious.
You know, it seems our sissy friend is having a little identity crisis.
What am I?
Queer? Aren't you?
No.
Now we're getting to tell our stories. Because we come from somewhere very personal.
I am openly gay. I don't hide from that. It's not a secret. But I don't want to start doing shows and have it be a caricature. By us existing as our authentic selves, we're like, well, no, that's your idea. This is who we are.
Like, I don't see wrestling as inherently masculine because I grew up in a time of like WWF. So like these people that are like, on the one hand, considered like pillars of masculinity, have feathered hair and tan. It is a sort of like self-objectification.
Being aggressive it's not a masculine thing. It's just a human thing. But people associate it with being a masculine thing because history.
Introducing first, Llama Jack! Making their way to the ring, Enigma!
Go, folks, this match is underway.
I heard stories about Llama Jack as
just got a sack of potatoes.
What I always say at their shows, existence is resistance. We're resisting all kinds of, you can't do that, you need to act this way, this is how a man acts, this is how a woman's supposed to act.
Seeing somebody get in the ring and take just what to you seems like an impossible amount of punishment, but continuing to go on and be affirmed and empowered through that. I think that's like very powerful.
I'm fighting this battle. I'm not fighting against anything. I'm fighting for love. Love of all trans and queer people. Love of anyone who's really felt small in this society.
You just do it because it's fun and fulfilling and empowering. And I think that more sports could like take that. Sports as a means of building community and bringing people together.
It's been a long journey to find myself. There's coming out and then there's finding yourself. Today is me letting go of all that. Me letting go of all the naysayers, all the weight that I've carried through all the traumas, through all the really tough stuff. Today's the day I let it go, spread my wings, and say I am.
We are showing up and saving space for each other so that we can look back in 10 years and like, yeah, like we did that.
Thank you to our panelists. Before we go, I have one more very important question for you. Some might say that it is the most important question of the day. You know, a lot of people love those like all-star MVP games, and I'm just wondering if you were putting together like a killer lineup of like power queers, who would be on your team?
I gotta have Sue Bird and Megan Rapinoe off the top, like starters.
I think I'll throw Carl Nassib in there and
I was
Jason
gonna
Collins.
say that.
Just, I think they've been able to have a huge impact on changing hearts and minds and just showing that gay people look like that too.
Okay. Carl, Megan, Sue, who else?
I gotta go from the women's soccer world. I think somebody I've really respected has been Kristen Press. She's not exactly what you expect of like, or what people, this is, you know, how we've been talking about it all day, right? People are like, what? She's gay? And I love the way that she handles herself about it, the way she carries herself about it. So I think I gotta vote for Kristen Press on this one.
All right. Johnny?
Somebody that I really admire is Gus Kenworthy. Mm-hmm. He's, you know, an Alpine star. Mm-hmm. And it's like a very bro-y kind of world. And I think he's been a really positive force and influence for a lot of young people. I mean, he's super cute and all, but I just think he's got a great head on his shoulders and is really serious about activism. And that's something I admire in him because I've never felt that same urge to be an activist, and I know how important it is for people, and it's important for me. So I think Gus Kenworthy.
I have no idea what sports these individuals are going to play together, by the way, but I am here to see that lineup.
It's got to be a combination.
Yeah,
handball?
anything.
Yeah.
Handball. There you go.
All right. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us. See you next time.